More real estate talk continues right now on The Jennifer Hammond Show.
Welcome back. This is Jennifer Hammond, and we are continuing on our series on how to improve our neighborhoods. We love making all sorts of information available to you that helps you make good decisions in real estate. And as we go through this, remember the social media, we're always interested in making this a conversation. How do we create we're answering your questions and finding out what are the gaps in the knowledge that would help you be more successful in real estate? One thing in real estate, as we try to make our neighborhoods better in one way or another, we always know to improve our real estate values are so tied to our school systems. So my next guest joining us is going to help us talk about schools and what we can do with this education system that will improve our education and, again, that always improves our real estate values. So our next guest is Patrice Maynard. She is a master teacher of both children and adults. Patrice has a lifetime of experience in the Waldorf education. So first of all, welcome to the show, Patrice.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure. So I know when we met, we talked about this. So often people don't know what a Waldorf education is. Would you first describe what that is?
Well, it's an unusual school approach. We're pre-K through 12 schools. There are 150 schools in North America and 1,100 worldwide. It's a developmentally specific, arts-based, education-based way to teach children. Very different. No technology until the upper grades, sometimes not even until high school, to teach kids to think for themselves before they reach for a device,
Right. And that, I think, is such a different viewpoint than many of the mainstream schools. And so can you tell a little bit about the background of why is a Waldorf school or Waldorf education so important, and how does it compare to maybe the traditional way of teaching?
Yeah, well, these external symptoms like no technology, we don't use textbooks. Children make their own textbooks and illustrate them. And we feel very strongly that people understand better when there's an artistic component. And I thought your audience, as you, Jennifer, were interested in the artistic sensibilities that are built by the very environment in the schools. We take interior design very seriously. Colors are chosen specifically for a child's age.
And talk about that. Give some examples of what would that mean for what age, what colors.
Well, we start with red or, very dark pink in the first grade, and then that moves around across the rainbow, really. In second grade, it moves to more peach or orange, and in third grade, yellow. And by the time you get to seventh and eighth grade, Jennifer, it's more like blues and purples when responsibility starts setting in with the coming on of puberty, And we use a technique called lasure painting. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, what is that?
It's beautiful. It's thin layers of translucent paint put on with a brush, unlike sponging or other kinds, or sheets, other kinds of varied colors on the wall. And it plays a lot with light and darkness, so there's never one place that's the same color, and it changes with the light in the room. And parents often take this technique home and make their homes more beautiful with this approach to painting walls. We also feel very strongly that not all corners should be rigid right-angle corners, thinking that the shape of the room actually influences the thinking of the children, and to avoid rigid thinking, softening in corners and around edges are used with sort of wood wainscoting or different techniques, or sometimes even with cloth, to make the room softer, so the children are freer to think in more creative ways.
I think that's such an interesting, like when you and I first talked, when we were talking about that, I thought, what an interesting, and one of the reasons I was just so delighted to have you on the show is when thinking about that, when we do, very high-end properties, we start to really look at those exact features, not having, those sharp corners. We have more of the round walls, and I think it's really interesting because colors really influence people's thinking. Again, happy colors versus not happy colors. And one of the things I think is interesting, how you just change the colors depending on their age. an elderly couple who's living in an apartment versus someone who might be in their 20s, I think looks at colors and shapes and design a lot differently. So, I think age tied to that design as well as the colors is really important.
Yes, we agree. And Jennifer, the interesting thing is that any beautiful environment helps people feel better.
Yeah.
It's a relief to come home from work to a beautiful environment, and it's a relief for students to come to school in a place that cares about no clutter and beautiful color and color that's actually thoughtful on their behalf, so they can relax more and learn more deeply, even while unconsciously they're developing an artistic aesthetic that'll serve them their whole life long.
I agree with you. I think that it's so important. Even my office, it's interesting. We have such beautiful aesthetic. And even in the studio, the Sirius XM studio, I remember I've been so incredibly blessed. In Washington, D.C., our studios are aesthetically just gorgeous. And talk about, we don't have corners in most of our studios. We have these round corners. And, of course, a lot of it's for sound and things of that nature. But our colors and such, we have, so, each studio is designed with a theme, like the 1960s. Oh my gosh, all that music. The gentlemen, the DJs who are in there, they have all the 1960s stuff all over the walls. From the Beatles, and it's just so much fun. And then we have one that's one of the kids channel, and it has all these children's toys. It's one of my favorite studios. It is just filled with toys, and I always think about, again, it makes it such a playful, happy environment to learn and be creative and be more artistic with whatever you're doing. And again, whether it's the DJ on the 1960s channel, which I love, Flash, he's hilarious, and he always has fun facts. But again, he makes it fun and engaging for people, just like the children's place, and really finding ways that we can engage children and help them be more creative and find out what helps them smile and be happier and be more uplifted. And I think having a beautiful interior design is something that is so often overlooked in classrooms, and especially when schools in general in areas are starting to fall down. One of the suggestions I make for somebody, especially if they're transferring from a different area to the Washington, D.C. area, one of the things I suggest is go to the schools and actually walk through them, because you can look at their website, but the website's a completely different thing. And you can look at their numbers, like you can look at their test scores and blah, 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 and you can look at their, sports and whatever might be important to you and your student. But why don't you take a look and go see the schools? And that, I think, is really important.
That's good advice. It's good advice, and you have a lot of experience, it sounds like, Jennifer, right there in your studio, about how much the mood of a room can make on the way you live in it. Yeah. So,
yeah. And it's true, because I will say that I've been to the other studios of Sirius XM, like our New York studios, and the studio itself, like where everyone works, are so much smaller and more cramped, and they're in the middle of doing a lot of renovations, so it's not quite as much fun. I've had a few talk show hosts in the New York studios who say they have studio envy, and they don't want to discuss it any further.
Well, good for you in Washington. That's terrific.
Yeah. So I think it's
the mood is important, and it makes a big difference. And as you say, that an artistic environment really influences the way children learn and the way they think. And they learn then to make the world more beautiful as they go forward, and not just settle for any old environment. Children and people really need beauty almost as much as they need bread, and
well, it's why art is so important.
Better.
Yeah. I think that art is so important because, you think about sometimes if you're feeling not so great or happy, you can go to a beautiful museum, like an art museum, and it can uplift you so quickly. And it seems magical, but I think that the learning environment of a school is really important, the aesthetics of it. So
yes.
I love
and why your good advice to really visit the school before you make a decision is important. And families, of course, are looking to not just the neighborhood, but the school that their children will be going to in a neighborhood. And I think I told you that the whole real estate market around Waldorf schools is very appreciative because of this aesthetic kind of sensibility that people bring, and it also increases the real estate value because families want to be close to the school. Many wish that their children could walk to the school or bike to the school, and it helps. It helps to know that there's a Waldorf school there, even if their children aren't going to it. It's influential in a neighborhood, and people who buy near the Waldorf school tend to take it outside too and have lots of flowers in their front yard and wish right outside of their home to make the environment more beautiful, more aesthetically pleasing.
And so that people can understand more about the Waldorf School, I know there's it's called the leisure technique, and how they can go to that website. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, it's this marvelous technique of using watercolor paints, actually, with a binder that then renders it waterproof for everyday use. But they use thin layers of this watercolor paint in layering, and it plays with light and dark. It reminds me of the sky at dawn or at sunset. So parts of the wall are light, and parts of the wall are darker. Sometimes it can go right through the whole rainbow softly in a whole big room. It's very beautiful. And if your audience wants to learn more about it, the website I would recommend is called Lazure, LAZURE.com. And that's the website of a premier leisure artist named Charles Andrade. And right on that website, you can learn how to do the technique. It's really not difficult. It just takes a little bit of patience and playing on the walls to get the technique down. It's really quite marvelous, unusually beautiful.
And also, we wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about your new award-winning book, Helping Children on Their Way. Yeah.
Yes. It's for those who would like to know more about Waldorf education. It's called Helping Children on Their Way, Educational Support for the Classroom. And it is a big book with lots of ideas in it that we use as tools to reach children, especially for parents who might be struggling with a child who has special learning needs or behavioral difficulties. There are many effective and soothing techniques that we use as Waldorf teachers that are, again, like our aesthetic sensibility, unusual and maybe helpful to parents. And it can be purchased at www.waldorfpublications.com. And if your audience mentions your show, Jennifer, we'll give them a free article from Mothering Magazine called The Wisdom of Waldorf.
So go ahead and repeat that. So where to get the book, and if they mention the Jennifer Hammond Show, they'll get a free article. So tell them where to buy it and to mention the Jennifer Hammond Show. Okay, it's
www.waldorfpublications, WALDORF, PUBLICATIONS.org, O-R-G, not C-O-M. And if you mention the Jennifer Hammond Show, we'll send with the book a free article from Mothering Magazine called The Wisdom of Waldorf that explains it again.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We'll make sure that we put all of your information up on our social media as well, and the information about where to get the book and to mention the Jennifer Hammond Show so they can get the free article from Mothering Magazine. Patrice, thank you
Jennifer,
so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so grateful that you had me on your show and grateful for the work you're doing for families all around the United States.
Yeah, all around the world, because everybody can hear it. The Sirius XM, you can hear us on the app. So we have people who listen from all over the world. Yay!
Oh, all over the world. That's even better, Jennifer. Keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Well, I thank you. Well, you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you again, Jennifer.
You're welcome. And so this week, as you go through your day, find a way that you can help someone else smile. I know you can share your smile. And remember, when someone else doesn't have a smile, they really need